In late March 1941, the war in the Mediterranean was at a boiling point. British ships of the Mediterranean Fleet moved to protect vital troop convoys bound for Greece. But behind the walls of Bletchley Park, something extraordinary had just happened. A young cryptanalyst named Mavis Beatty cracked the Italian naval enigma for the very first time. Her first decoded message was chillingly vague. "Today's the day -3. Days later, a second message arrived, this time crystal clear. An Italian battle fleet, 1 battleship, 6 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, and destroyers was on the move. Their target, the lifeline of merchant convoys supplying British forces. But Enigma's secrets were fragile. The Allies could never let the Italians know their codes were broken. Every interception required a cover story, a visible excuse. This time it was a reconnaissance plane, carefully steered into position to give the illusion of a lucky sighting. The real source remained hidden. Meanwhile, Admiral Andrew Cunningham, commander of the Mediterranean Fleet, played his own part in deception. One afternoon, he strolled into the golf club in Alexandria with a suitcase, as if settling in for an overnight stay. He was spotted on the golf course, within full view of the Japanese consul. But when night fell, Cunningham slipped away, quietly boarding his flagship, the battleship HMS Warspite. Even an evening party had been advertised aboard the ship, though no such party was ever intended. The ruse was complete. At the same time, Axis intelligence faltered. The Italians had been misled by German reports that the British Mediterranean Fleet was nearly crippled, reduced to a single operational battleship, with no aircraft carriers left. But in reality, the Royal Navy held 3 battleships in the region, and while the carrier Illustrious had been damaged, it had already been replaced by HMS Formidable. The Italians were walking straight into a trap. The Allied response was formidable. At its core stood the aircraft carrier HMS Formidable, flanked by 3 of Britain's most powerful Queen Elizabeth-class battleships, Barham, Valiant, and Warspite. Guarding them was a wall of destroyers. The 10th Destroyer Flotilla, HMS Greyhound, HMS Griffin, and the Australian destroyer HMAS Stuart under the command of the bold Commander Hector Heck Waller. Alongside them, the 14th Destroyer Flotilla, HMS Jervis, Janus, Mohawk, and Nubian, commanded by the equally resolute Captain Philip Mack. Additional destroyers, HMS Hotspur and Havoc, joined the screen, ensuring the fleet was shielded from every angle. Further ahead, Force B sailed under Admiral Sir Henry Pridham-Whipple. This lighter but highly mobile group included the cruisers HMS Ajax, Gloucester Orion, and the Australian HMAS Perth. Supporting them were the destroyers HMS Hasty, Hereward, and Ilex. Other Allied warships, patrolling nearby waters or attached to convoys, waited in striking distance, Defender, Jaguar, and Juno in the Kathira Channel, while Decoy, Carlisle, Calcutta, Bonaventure, and the Australian HMAS Vampire lurked nearby. Together, they formed a vast Allied armada, one of the most powerful fleets assembled in the Mediterranean. But steaming toward them was a force no less formidable. The Italian fleet, under Admiral Admiral Iachino, sailed with his flagship, the modern battleship Vittorio Veneto, shielded by destroyers of the 13th Flotilla, Alpino, Bersagliere, Fusiliere, and Grenadier. Alongside were Italy's heavy hitters, Zara, Fiume, and Pola, escorted by the 9th Destroyer Flotilla, Alfredo Oriani, Giasso Carducci, Vincenzo Gioberti, and Vittorio Alfieri. The second group brought more power, Trieste, Trento, and Bolzano, guarded by Ascari, Corsair, and Carabinieri, completing the fleet. 2 sleek light cruisers, Luigi di Save, Duca degli Abruzzi, and Giuseppe Garibaldi, sailed with destroyers Emanuele Passagno and Nicoloso de Recco from Brindisi. It was a battle line of steel and firepower, the pride of Mussolini's navy. By late March 1941, 2 massive fleets were on a collision course. The British Mediterranean Fleet, guided by secret Enigma intelligence, and the Italian battle fleet. Confident in flawed Axis reports, the stage was set for one of the most decisive naval clashes of the Second World War, the Battle of Cape Matapan. Vice Admiral Pridham-Whipple, with the cruisers Ajax, Gloucester, Orion, Perth, and their escorting destroyers, departed Greek waters, their course south of Crete. At the same time, Admiral Cunningham sailed from Alexandria with the carrier HMS Formidable, and the battleships Warspite, Barham, and Valiant bound to rendezvous with the cruiser force. But the Italians would not retain the element of surprise. At noon, a British Sunderland flying boat sighted the Italian fleet. Admiral Iachino's advantage vanished. Still, armed with decrypted intelligence, that the carrier Formidable was at sea. The Italians pressed forward, determined to show Berlin their resolve, and confident in the speed of their warships. They prepared to engage. At dawn on the 28th of March, an Italian row 43 float plane from Vittorio Veneto spotted the British cruiser squadron near the island of Gavdos. By 7:55 a.m., the Trento cruiser group sighted Pridham Whipple's ships heading southeast. Believing the British were fleeing, the Italians gave chase. At 8:12, from nearly 24,000 yards, the Italian heavy cruisers opened fire. Trieste unleashed 132 armor-piercing shells. Trento hurled more than 200. Bolzano added another 189. For nearly an hour, salvo after salvo rained down, but poor range-finding plagued the Italians. Not a single telling hit was scored. HMS Gloucester fired 3 salvos in reply, falling short, yet enough to force the Italians to adjust their course. By 9 a.m., the Italians broke off the pursuit, turning northwest to rejoin their battleship Vittorio Veneto. The British shadowed at range. Cautious but persistent, Admiral Iachino now set a deadly trap, hoping to draw the cruisers into the guns of his flagship. At 10:55, the trap was sprung. Vittorio Veneto appeared on the horizon, opening fire with her massive 15-inch guns. In just under half an hour, she fired 94 shells in 29 salvos. Her shots well aimed, but scattered by excessive dispersion. 11 shells even jammed in her barrels. The Allied cruisers, caught off guard by the sudden arrival of a battleship, were forced to retreat. Fragments from near misses caused slight damage, but catastrophe was avoided. Later, dramatic photographs taken aboard HMS Gloucester, showing Italian salvos crashing around the British ships, were published in Life magazine, bringing the battle vividly to the public eye. The opening clash off Gavdos had revealed much. Italian gunnery still struggled at range, but Vittorio Veneto's presence loomed as a constant threat. The battle for control of the Mediterranean was only just beginning. Morning, March 28, 1941. Admiral Cunningham's fleet was closing in. At 9:38 a.m., torpedo bombers from HMS Formidable roared into action. The ferry albacores dived toward the Italian flagship Vittorio Veneto, but their torpedoes failed to strike home. Still, the Italians were forced to take evasive action, their formation broken as anti-aircraft guns of every caliber lit up the sky. In the confusion, even one of the German escorting Ju-88 bombers was shot down by a British fighter. Admiral Iachino, realizing his fleet could no longer maintain its pursuit, broke off at 12:20. The Italians turned north, hoping to reach the safety of their air cover at Taranto. But the respite didn't last. At 3:09 p.m., another strike found its mark. Lieutenant Commander John Daly-Elstead led his albacore straight through the storm of anti-aircraft fire, releasing a torpedo from just 1,000 meters. It smashed into Vittorio Veneto's port propeller, flooding compartments and forcing the battleship to a halt. Daly-Elstead and his crew paid the ultimate price. Their aircraft was shot down moments later, yet their sacrifice crippled Italy's pride of the fleet. After frantic damage control, Vittorio Veneto got underway again at 4:42 p.m., but she could make only 19 knots. Cunningham, hearing of her damage, pressed the pursuit. At sunset, the British struck again. Between 7:36 and 7:50 p.m., a third wave of albacores and swordfish swooped in. The Italians threw up smoke, searchlights, and a wall of flak to protect their flagship. This time, Vittorio Veneto escaped further harm, but the heavy cruiser Pola wasn't so lucky. Caught almost dead in the water after narrowly avoiding a collision, she was struck by a torpedo that knocked out her boilers and main steam line. Without power, Pola drifted helplessly in the gathering night. Unaware that Cunningham's battleships were closing fast, Admiral Iachino ordered a relief force back to assist. It included Pola's sister ships, Zara and Fiume, along with a screen of destroyers. But delays in communication meant they did not turn back for nearly an hour. As they steamed south to rescue their crippled comrade, they were sailing straight into a trap, one that would be sprung before the night was over. Night falls on the Mediterranean. At 20:15, HMS Orion's radar detected a vessel 6 miles to port. It was the crippled Italian cruiser Pola, dead in the water. Shortly after 22 o'clock, the bulk of Admiral Cunningham's force picked up the rest of the Italian squadron on radar. The Italians had no such advantage. Their ships were blind in the dark, relying only on the human eye. Italian doctrine had never prepared them for a night battle. Their gun batteries were not even ready for action. At 22:20, Italian lookouts spotted the approaching force, mistaking the British battleships for their own. Then, at just 3,800 yards, point-blank range for battleship guns, three giants of the Royal Navy, Warspite, Valiant, and Barham, unleashed their broadsides. Searchlights pierced the night, sweeping across the Italian cruisers. On Valiant, one of the searchlight crews was commanded by a young midshipman, Prince Philip of Greece. Within minutes, devastation followed. Zara and Fiume were blasted apart, their turrets hurled into the air by massive 15-inch shells. Fiume slipped beneath the waves by 23:30, while Zara, crippled and burning, was finished off hours later by a torpedo from HMS Jervis. The destruction didn't end there. Two Italian destroyers, Vittorio Alfieri and Giasu Carducci, went down in the opening minutes. Only Gioberti and Oriani managed to escape into the darkness, one of them badly damaged. Pola, the stricken cruiser that had drawn the squadron into this trap, was boarded, her crew evacuated, and at dawn, she too was sent to the bottom by torpedoes from the destroyers Jervis and Nubian. By morning, the scale of the disaster was clear. Admiral Cunningham allowed the Italians to send a hospital ship, Gradisca, to recover survivors. The Allies rescued over 1,000 sailors. The Italians saved another 160, but more than 2,300 men of the Regia Marina had perished, most from the cruisers Zara and Fiume. For the British, losses were almost negligible. Just one torpedo bomber had been shot down. For the Italians, Cape Matapan was nothing short of catastrophe. The battle demonstrated the deadly combination of radar, naval aviation, and night-fighting doctrine, leaving the once-proud Italian fleet reeling and tilting the balance of power in the Mediterranean. The Battle of Cape Matapan was more than just a night of gunfire and destruction. It was a turning point that exposed the deep weaknesses of the Italian Navy. While Admiral Cunningham secured a crushing tactical victory, sinking 3 heavy cruisers and 2 destroyers in a matter of minutes, the broader strategic picture was more nuanced. The Italian battleship Vittorio Veneto had escaped, meaning the Regia Marina still posed a serious threat in the Mediterranean. Even so, Admiral Admiral Iachino admitted after the war that the defeat revealed Italy's fatal shortcomings: its lack of radar, its outdated night-fighting doctrine, and its poor coordination between air and naval forces. For months afterward, the Italian fleet avoided major operations in the eastern Mediterranean. The psychological blow was immense, but perhaps the most hidden factor behind Cunningham's triumph was not at sea at all, but back in England. The brilliant codebreakers of Bletchley Park, led by Dilly Knox and his team of young women, had decrypted Italian signals that revealed the fleet's movements. Cunningham knew where to strike, and struck with precision. It was one of the earliest examples of how intelligence could shape a battle as much as firepower. For decades, this secret remained buried, with myths and rumors swirling about spies and stolen codebooks. Only in the late 1970s, after declassification, did the world learn just how decisive British code-breaking had been at Cape Matapan. In the end, the battle was remembered as Italy's greatest naval defeat of the war. For the British, it was a showcase of radar, air power, and intelligence working in harmony. And for Admiral Cunningham, who praised both his sailors and the unseen hands at Bletchley Park, it was a victory won not just at sea, but in the silent war of signals and ciphers.